Hello, good afternoon, good evening, welcome back to my channel. Look, I keep getting lip gloss on my teeth. How's everyone doing? How are you? How's your week been? I hope you're all well. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Charlotte. I had a lovely viewer comment a really good idea, and that was for a mid-year reading check-in. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So a mid-year reading check-in on my favourite books, but I thought I would extend it out slightly. I thought we could talk about like where I'm at with my reading stats, books I also didn't like, kind of what my plans are for reading this month or the rest of the year. So we're gonna make it into like a full mid-year reading check-in review, which I thought would be quite fun. It seemed natural to me to include those things because I can't really talk about my favourite books without talking about my kind of least favourite XYZ. So you know I love stats and data, and I get all of that on Storygraph as well. So I thought we could two birds, one stone, multiple books. I also realised I had a couple of books that I DNF'd that I hadn't added to my monthly reading wrap-ups, because when I go on my Storygraph to look at the books I've read that month, it obviously doesn't show my DNFs. So I'm gonna go through books I've DNF'd for the year as well. For those of you that are new, I do monthly reading wrap-ups. I've got a playlist on my page, so I've been doing them since last year as well. So if you want to binge what I've read, get a sense of my reading style, get a sense of my review style, you can find the playlist on my page. So one thing I've decided to do this year is to not spend any money on books. I really wanted to move away from spending money on books for like a multitude of reasons, really. Like, hear me out, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying books. I love buying books. It's like one of the things I happily spend money on over and over and over again. I think there's much worse things you could be spending your money on, but I do think on BookTube and BookTok in particular, there is kind of like an unrealistic promotion of how many books you should be buying. I don't really think it's like normal to be spending £300 or dollars on massive brand new book hauls a month, and I know that that like makes really compelling content, but I don't think it's regular or achievable or something we should be doing. I will say that I try to stay out of people's business about how they spend their money, but like I personally don't have the space for that many books. I definitely got into like a overbuying of books and I wasn't reading them. I'm looking at my physical TBR, which is why I keep looking downwards, and this is kind of an attempt to move through my physical TBR before I buy more books as well, because I have books in there that I bought in 2022 that I just still haven't read. It was more kind of like an analysis of my own spending habits. So the only things I've bought this year that are brand new books are books that I had gift cards for. So I got some for Christmas and my birthday. I saved them up. Library finds, that's kind of the only book related purchase I've got, because I got a library card. I've been taking a lot of books from the library this year, but I have been a little bit late, so I've had to pay a couple of library related fines and reservation fees. My initial goal was to carry this on for 6 months. So I got to June and was like, okay, I've done it. I'm really proud of myself. So I thought I might as well keep it on for a little while longer and just see how I go. I thought about changing it to only purchasing books secondhand, but if anything, that was just going to encourage me to go on Wild of Books and do a huge secondhand book splurge. So yeah, I'm going to see if I can keep it going for the rest of the year. I personally feel like really accomplished and really impressed with myself that I managed to, because overspending on books was something that I would do all the time. I would just go in to Waterstones after work and buy a book I saw just like based on vibes. And if you're doing that a few times a week, or that's turning into like a £50 trip, it just isn't sustainable for the amount of money I make. And another thing I didn't do this year as well was set myself a reading target. So I set myself a reading target for the last 2 years. I have discussed this in other videos. I just felt like I wasn't going to this year. I've done 2 years of targeted reading. I didn't meet my target last year, which I was actually okay with, but I just thought, let's see what I can do without one. And this year I wanted to read some longer books. Quite a lot of the books in my TBR are like in excess of 500 pages, and I noticed that when I had a reading target, I'd kind of picked up some patterns of the length of books that I read throughout the month. So I wouldn't start an 800-page book on like the 25th of the month because I was convinced that I wouldn't be able to get through it in time. So I would put that down in favour of 2 shorter books, and I just think, yeah, let's just do it without. Let's see what I can achieve without the pressure. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that so far. I have a healthy relationship with reading anyway, but it's kind of taken the pressure off a little bit. Not everything needs to be like a competition. I was hoping that because of this I might read some books that are like higher quality. I might read outside genres a bit more. The higher quality portion has been questionable because I do have certain genres that I really love, but I definitely feel like I've been doing some more diverse reading, especially because I've been tackling my physical TBR as opposed to just reading like loads of stuff on Kindle. Anyway, now you know a little bit about me and my reading background, I think we will tackle some stats. So I use Storygraph, which I'll put in the description box. You can add me. I don't use Goodreads, although I'm kind of like regretting not using Goodreads because I do cross-reference a lot of reviews with Storygraph and Goodreads because I'm really interested to see what people have to say. I find reviewers on Goodreads are usually funnier, and I like the kind of following on Goodreads that you can do, whereas on Storygraph it's kind of like you add friends and add community. I feel like Goodreads is more popular, but I don't like their reviewing system. To me, it's not as robust. I like that on Storygraph you can add content warnings. I like that you can set the pace, the mood of the book. So I just don't want to have two platforms, but I really do. I think people on Goodreads are really, really funny, and a lot of my favourite booktubers and book talkers are on there. So it is more of a shame really because I used to have Goodreads, but so anyway, this is where I'm getting my stats from. So for 2024 so far, I've read 45 books, and that is 16,780 pages. That's really interesting to me because last year my reading target was 100, and I remember panicking when I got to July that I like wasn't on track to be halfway. And although that's not quite halfway, I feel like I could hit 100 books reading without that target. So really interesting. About 60% of my books are 300 to 499 pages, 13% are 500 plus pages, and 27% are less than 300 pages. I've read a lot less non-fiction this year, so only 7% of my books have been non-fiction. So my top genres for last year, neck and neck, were romance and fantasy, with everything else like miles behind them. And this year my top genre is contemporary fiction. Romance and fantasy are second and third and quite close, but then literary is after that, quite close as well. So I do feel like I'm kind of reading different books this year, which I was hoping to do because I read a lot of romance and fantasy that I didn't enjoy last year. The format of the books I've read 53% digital, 20% audio, and 27% print. So I've definitely read less physical books this year. That really surprises me, but actually if I go back and look at my reviews, I probably have only read about 1 to 2 physical books a month. I feel this year I've been really consistent with my reading as opposed to like binging reading books and then not picking up anything for ages, and that's what I did last year. Well, that's how it felt to me last year, and I think it was because of the target, whereas I think the longest stint I've gone without reading this year has been about 3 weeks, and that was due to a slump. I can't remember what book I read, but something put me in a slump. One thing I am doing badly with on Storygraph is rating books, so I haven't given any book star ratings. You all probably know, if you watch my channel regularly, that in my monthly reviews I've stopped giving star ratings, and to be honest, this has really helped with my reviewing. I feel like it's so subjective giving star ratings. Everyone's star rating is completely differently. If I give a book a star rating the second I finish it, that's going to be different from how I feel about it in 2 weeks. So it's just not a very watertight system for me, and I know it doesn't need to be, but I feel like it's really helped with my skill, I guess, as a reviewer. I don't feel the pressure of saying that a book is 3 stars and wondering what 3 stars means. I do like to give them star ratings on Storygraph because it helps me look at the stats at the end of the year. I quite like to do the stats and all the data and stuff. I love data. So what I do need to do is go through and bulk star review all of those 45 books, but that will probably be an evening job when the telly is on. So now we've done stats, I want to talk about some books that I've DNF'd recently. DNF is did not finish, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, and I'm trying to get better at DNFing. One thing about me is that I never used to DNF. I would force myself to finish a book because I would think that it could give me a chance, and then I would end up in a horrible reading slump because I forced myself to read a 300-page book that I wanted to quit at 100 pages. It's not a very good boundary because I think it's not doing yourself justice as a reader, because you know what you like, and also it doesn't mean that you don't like a book. It means that you maybe just now isn't the time to read it. Maybe you just need to revisit it. Maybe it's not the book you're in the mood for, especially if you're a mood reader, which is something I think I've kind of discovered. A lot of the books I've DNF'd, I've forced myself to pick up. I've DNF'd 5 books this year. I'm going to just whiz through them, what they are, and kind of my reasons for not picking them up, and whether I think I'll pick them back up again. Some of them are physical, some of them are Kindle, and I only had a couple to hand, so I will put a little image on the screen of what they look like. So the first book I DNF'd was an audiobook, and it was The Iliad, and it was Emily Wilson's translation. I was really looking forward to reading this, and I was a little bit disappointed that I DNF'd it because I specifically waited for her translation to come out because I'd heard amazing things about it. I kind of got off the back of a Greek mythology binge and thought, you know what, this translation is the perfect time for me to try it. The reason I DNF'd it is because I found that, you know, you have to engage so much with audiobooks. You can't just like put it on in the background and half take it in. Some you can, but this one you couldn't. And I think I lost my way about a third through it and couldn't find the place from where I'd last been listening properly. I really tried to stick at it, and I just, you know, when you lose your place. I thought, I'm so many hours into this, I've been listening for so long, I just don't think I can continue. It was completely my fault. I just really lost my place, and I think I am definitely going to revisit it. I would really like to revisit that translation. I'm wondering if I should go for a physical copy over a audiobook. I have a physical copy of the Iliad that I picked up at a car boot for 50p. It's a really old translation, so I thought, oh, I'll try start that. I started it, I got about 50 pages in, this was last year, and I thought, let me wait for this translation, let me wait for the audiobook, and yeah, I will persevere and I will read the Iliad. I just don't think it's our time yet. I think I just need to be quite an engaged listener with that, and it didn't work out. The next one was a library book for me, and it was Wednesday's Child by Yi-Yun Lee. This is a collection of short stories, and something about it I just couldn't persevere. I picked it up on a whim because I thought the cover was beautiful, and it wasn't a testament to what I thought of the book. It was just, I think the subject matter was a bit intense for me. I think I wasn't in the right headspace to read it. I've heard amazing things about this author, but I just thought, you know what, a bit of self-care here. I'm not gonna read this. It was just a bit depressing for me, and I don't think all of the stories are inherently depressing. I think maybe it was just like the way I was receiving them. So the next one was actually a book I stole from a cafe. It was a chain, by the way, not an independent cafe. I would never steal a book from an independent cafe, but it was on like their decorative displays, and I think someone else had left it. But you know when you just know no one's going to pick them up or read it. I like really don't promote theft, but I had to be honest about where I got this book because I thought it was kind of funny. But this is Tales of Folk Horror. Short story, non-fiction, Tales of Folk Horror. Quite obvious what that is. It's so short, it's like 148 pages, so I thought, yeah, nice little folk horror book. I love horror books, I don't read enough of them. I think the first one, it was very like old-timey folk ye old English language, and I picked it up out of my pile with the intention of like blasting through it, and I could barely understand what was going on. I think it was just not the book for me, and you know what, I really cut my losses. I was like, I got this book for free, so I put it back somewhere else and let someone have at it, and maybe they'll pick it up and love it. Maybe I've delivered someone their new favourite book. If you don't like a book and you don't want to do a charity shop trip, I just leave them in like public spaces, on trains, on buses, in cafes, and I just think like, oh, that's really nice. So the next book I DNF'd is Sinner by Sierra Simone. This is a book 2 of a book called Priest, which I've previously read. So Priest is obviously a sexy book about a priest, and Sinner is kind of the reverse. It happens in the same universe, and I believe it's about a woman who's just taken her vows. I don't know what the official terminology is, but she works in she's a nun basically. I read Priest in May 2023 if you want to go back and watch my full review for Priest, but this isn't about Priest. I read Sinner because it was on Kindle Unlimited finally. It never used to be, and I thought, you know what, I'm really bad. I always read like one book in the series. Let me try read the second. I just needed something easy to read. It was very late. I just kind of found the writing insufferable. It was something about the main male character's narrative voice I just didn't like. I know smart is smart, like I'm under no illusions about like the crude language and the writing. I think maybe my tastes have changed a little bit with smart. Maybe I don't want to say my standards have got higher, because if you liked this, I don't want to imply that your standards are lower, but it was just something about the language and the combination of stuff. I DNF'd it about 50 pages in. I just thought like, why am I reading this? I don't really love age gap. I don't dislike it, I just like won't reach for it, so I was just like, eh. And then the last DNF of the year is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I've actually DNF'd this over halfway through, so this is where I got to. This is a young adult Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, so it should be everything I love. I picked this up years ago after seeing like rave reviews about it. I thought, finally, read it, Charlotte. I saw rave reviews about it, and when I looked up reviews recently, a lot of the reviews were actually really like not great. I think maybe it just was a bit boring for me. I don't know. I couldn't really understand. I just didn't feel gripped or engaged. I felt like some of the Romeo and Juliet parallels were like almost a bit overly obvious, but then I don't know, I just couldn't put my finger on this. I found it really hard to read. I was on my way to a reading slump. I was slogging through it because this was the first and the oldest book that had been in my TBR, so I picked it up like, if I'm going to read any of them, I've got to read this. And I felt really like a sense of owing. It was a bit like, if I can't read this, I'm never going to get through my TBR, but that wasn't the case. So I've just given it up. I might pick it back up because I don't have that long to go, but honestly, this is a series. I think it's a duology and I just don't want to read the second one. So yeah, it wasn't right for me. If you've read this, please tell me if it's worth persevering. So next, I'm going to talk about very, very briefly books that I thought I would love that I didn't love. This all seems very negative, but it's because I want to put the books I loved near the end of the video because I want to finish on like a more positive note. These weren't books that I didn't like. These were just books that I was really expecting to like a lot more. So I had that kind of like sad little disappointment that I thought, oh, I guess like maybe books that I thought were overhyped. I'm not going to do a synopsis and a full review, but what I'll do is I'll say when it was that I read it. So if you want to go back through and watch like my full thoughts and my full review, you can, and you'll know which reading wrap up it's in. So first on my list was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I expected a lot more from this book, and I know the writing is very much kind of like indicative of the times, but I was just really, really shocked that everyone loves this book as much as they do. I know it's very racist, very misogynistic, and that is like an indication of the times, but for me it just made for uncomfortable reading given the author is a white woman. That's not the standalone reason why I don't like the book, because I can understand that there are some like incredibly seminal pieces of writing and classic pieces of writing that are really good even though they include that language. I'm just surprised that it gets the hype it gets. That's obviously not me excusing like the types of language used in some classic texts, by the way. I just want to establish that, but I think there are, I can't think of any examples, but there are some classical works that are also indicative of the times they were written in. But yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I hope you understand. I think maybe if I'd read it when I was a lot younger, it might have been more influential to me. I might have felt its impact a little bit more. I just was left a bit like wanting something more from it. I read The Bell Jar in March, so you can find it in the March 2024 reading wrap up. The next one was A Man Called Ove. I'd been recommended this loads. I read Beartown and I quite enjoyed Beartown. I just, again, maybe it's because I'm not that enamoured by like this grumpy old man. The thing is, I can understand why the book is as popular as it is, and that's okay, and I can see like the formula of what makes it like such a great popular read. I just was a bit underwhelmed. I did cry, it did make me emotional, but I didn't feel connected to Ove at all. I found his story touching, but I didn't find him endearing, and I get that it's this kind of like, you never know what everyone's going through, you never know people's circumstances, but I was just a bit like, okay, like I know that already. I think it just didn't do for me what it did for everyone else, but that's okay because I understand that that's a me thing, not a book thing. My full review for A Man Called Ove is in the April 2024 reading wrap up. Next up was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I had really high hopes for this following the Chestnut Springs series, which I absolutely loved, and looking back on it, I do think that when I first read Chestnut Springs, I didn't really love the first book and I still persevered and loved the rest of the series. So maybe I should do that this time round with this book. I also am not that invested in like single dad trope, and I know that this is like a single dad's universe, so I don't know, we'll see. Maybe if I want to, I'll read the second one when it comes out and give it another chance. But I just think I had quite high expectations. It's good, the covers are nice, but it's not amazing. I read Wild Love in April, so you can find the review for that and the synopsis in the April 2024 reading wrap up. Last but not least was Powerless. I read Powerless last month, so you can find it in my June 2024 reading wrap up, full review. I know a lot of you shared the same thoughts as me. I was expecting to love this book. The way people talk about it, I was like, it's going to be right up my street. It's a fantasy romance, there's trials and tribulations. I won't go on about it too much because I could, but I just was a little let down. Again, this is not books that I thought were like bad, all of these books. This is books that I was expecting to like more than I did, although this one is bad too. But yeah, I just wasn't obsessed with it. I won't go on about it because it's the most recent review, but you can find that in the June video. Let me know what you thought of these 4 books, if you liked them, if you didn't love them, if you agree with my opinion, if you thought they were overhyped. It's really interesting for me to see kind of where we agree and where we disagree. Let's move on to books I've loved this year. I've been quite sparing with this section because I have had a lot of of books that I've really liked, but I'm trying to kind of determine these books by the reread factor, books that I would revisit. This section is quite scant, but do not take this as an indication of that I didn't love the other books. So I recently read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is kind of like a sci-fi thriller, and I just found it so gripping, and I knew I would love it. It's been on my TBR for ages, so when I actually loved it, that to me is a really satisfying feeling. Can't remember your names, I'm so sorry, but I was recently talking with a follower over DMs about this book in specific because they had DM'd me when they saw I was reading it to say they love it, it's one of their favourite books, and it's been adapted into a TV show. And I want to watch the TV show, but I'm kind of at the point now where, like she said to me, I don't want to watch the TV show in case I don't like it as much because I liked the book so much. The next one was Eileen by Atessa Moshfegh. I really like nearly all of the Atessa Moshfegh books I've read. I know that's quite obvious. I feel like lots of people are kind of bored of hearing her name on BookTok, BookTube, etc. But I've only really recently discovered her, and yeah, Eileen was just a lovely, well, it wasn't lovely, maybe that's the wrong word. It was a compelling read. Eileen is a fiction, it's quite dark, it's quite mysterious. I guess you could call it a thriller. But again, it just had that hooked factor to me. I just couldn't stop reading it, and I really like unlikable, unreliable main character voices, and she just writes them so well. I will admit the ending was maybe a little lackluster for me, but I feel like a lot of the books she writes aren't written to have like huge punchy shock factor endings. They just kind of end, and that's not the worst thing in the world. I quite like that. It feels appropriate for the book itself. Another really short one, 104 pages, is A Short Stay in Hell. I loved this book. If you are in the mood for something short, something existential, something that's gonna make you feel a bit, I would really recommend this. From what I understand of the reviews, it's quite divisive. Some people really don't like it, but it just hit the spot for me. I was thinking about it for a few days after, and I think I'll keep rereading it. It's down as literary fiction, but it also has kind of like a magical realism to it. It's about where you go when you die, and like hell is essentially a huge library, which sounds okay, but it becomes more and more frustrating. It just really sat with me for quite a few days. That's all I can describe it as. Down the Drain by Julia Fox. I listened to this on audiobook, which I think is what made it so much more of a vivid and well-told experience, because she narrates the audiobook herself. Again, just so compelling. The way she writes, it made me laugh, it made me cry. I learned so much about her because I didn't actually know so much about her, and it was really entertaining. I just felt like I fully, completely listened and engaged for the whole duration of the audiobook, which I know is what you should do, what most people do, but there was just something quite spellbinding about it, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I listened to it because it had a lot of hype. I thought, you know what, this is something I should listen to. A lot of people that I have quite similar book tastes are also listening to it. It's very highly reviewed. I only kind of knew what I knew about her from pop culture, from TikTok audios, from soundbite. I definitely think this was a worthwhile read and listen. It's only 10 hours, so I would really recommend listening to it. And then this last one is a little bit of a on my favourites on my loves list, but I only like the first half. So I loved this. It was so almost right for me, and it wasn't, but I probably will reread it, I think, even if I only reread it halfway just because of the way it made me feel. But this is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Go watch my review of this if you want to hear my full thoughts, because I did talk about it for quite a long time, but this is a fiction, historical fiction, light touch fantasy, very light touch fantasy, and it's very long, and there's just something about like an academic setting in a book that just, I don't know, fills my chest up, fills the gaping hole in my heart. It makes me feel student optimism and university campus. Oh, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, I love it. I love that setting. It just encaptured me. I think a common theme with a lot of these books that are kind of in my favourite books are that I was really gripped from beginning to end, or beginning to halfway in most of this book's case. I just was like fully immersed, and I guess my 5-star kind of litmus test is immersion. I've noticed with my reviewing there's a difference between being hooked and immersed, because I have been hooked on books that I didn't like Powerless, because I just wanted to see what happened, and I've been hooked on books that I wouldn't consider good books, but to be immersed, to be like completely in the world, to be just really enjoying and savouring like every single second. Babel was so right for me until it wasn't, and then I kind of couldn't look past a lot of the criticisms and what felt incomplete about it for me. I think the first half, or the first like 2/3, I'd say the first 2/3 because half is not enough, was so well written, and I enjoyed it so much. Maybe well written isn't the word, but I enjoyed them so much that it kind of almost just about excuses the flaws and the issues I had with the second half, the second bit, the last portion. You'll find my review of Dark Matter and Babel in my May reading wrap up of this year. I reviewed Down the Drain in April. I reviewed A Short Stay in Hell and Eileen in March. So yeah, you can see I've been quite sparing with the books I reviewed as like my favourite books, because I think I need to sit on it a little bit more, and I might do a favourites review at the end of the year. I don't know. I have been thinking about doing my favourite books of like all time, but that's really, really difficult for me. So if that's something you would like to see, please let me know, and I can do a separate video on that. I think if I did a favourite books video, I could probably update it yearly, maybe. But I'm not going to do a TBR, because I did a TBR quite recently, TBR tour of my physical books, which I'll put in the description box. But I did get a few books from the library yesterday, 3, so I thought I'd talk you through them. Kind of talk you through what I'm planning to read for the rest of the month, or maybe some books that I would really like to read ASAP. So at the time of recording, I am reading Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. I literally only have like this many pages left to go, so I should really just finish this today. I'm also reading These Hollow Vows on Kindle. I know I said I wasn't trusting BookTok, but I saw one really good review from someone who I looked at their page and I kind of was like, okay, I get the vibe, I kind of trust their reviews. So I just picked it up and I'm reading it, and it's okay so far. It's very fantasy romance. But it's giving a bit of escapism I need, and it's a duology, I think, so I like a duology because it's not too big of a commitment. I went to the library, so I need to read these all within a month before the end of the month, which I think is doable. I just probably need to put down the Kindle after I finished These Hollow Vows, and I got 3 books. One I saw on recent returns literally as I was walking out, and then one I just picked up because it was front facing. I was on my lunch break and I thought, you know what, let's get a silly little romance. My reservation was Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. I've wanted to read Eliza Clark books for ages. I cannot believe I haven't read any, but I thought I'd start with Boy Parts. Everyone keeps telling me to read Penance, but I keep looking at it and just not quite picking it up. So I thought if I get a taste with something a little bit shorter, it's a good start. Something completely unserious. My roommate is a vampire. I really like the cover of this. I think it's really cute. I actually went to pick up some Ali Hazelwood, but they only had Bride in, and I've already read Bride, so I wanted to get The Love Hypothesis. I think that's the main one, because I've read 2 Ali Hazelwoods. I read Bride and whatever the 3-part novella is, and I really liked her writing style. It felt very formulaic, but I thought, let me pick up that one. Anyway, this isn't about Ali Hazelwood. There wasn't any, so I got this instead because it was nearby, and yeah, it just looks really good. I love a romance, I love a vampire. It's nice to read a vampire book that is romantic, that isn't a dark fantasy romance. So I'm actually really looking forward to picking this up and reading it. This caught my eye because it's been on my TBR for ages, and it's Death Valley by Melissa Broder. One of my friends gave me her copy of The Pisces, which I reviewed last year, I think. I need to get it back because I've lent it to a friend and I actually really like it and I want to keep it. But I really liked it. Melissa Broder's writing is like a little bit more unhinged than I was expecting. I want to read Milkfed as well, but I was looking at the recent returns, because I always look at the recent returns in the library, and this was on it, so I just thought, go on, let me get it. I wouldn't usually get a hardback, but it is quite short, so I thought, why not? And it's quite light. So those are my 3 books. They're all really colourful, to be honest. These are probably books that I would buy for the covers. I'm quite snobby with buying books now, especially because I'm not buying books this year, but previously I tend to only buy things that I really like the covers of. So I just think if you've got limited space, you should at least have beautiful books. 2 books I definitely want to read soonish is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I got this with my gift card. It's a bit dusty. I keep saying I'm going to do this. I mean, it's so pristine that I almost don't want to read it. And the back cover's green, which is really nice. But this is about 500 pages. Oh, 860 pages. Got that a bit wrong. It doesn't look that big though. This looks like a 500 pager to me, or maybe I just have like a really skewed perception. The typeface is quite small. But I really want to read this, but again, I'm just really not very good at reading big physical books. I just keep putting it off for whatever reason. So if you think that I need to bump this up quickly, let me know, because I keep getting messages about this. And then a reread, which is also on my list, but I like to save this one for the autumn, is The Secret History. This is one of my favourite books. My copy is old and battered, and dense as well. This is a really old publication actually, but I love this book, so I really want to reread it this year. I read it for the first time in 2022. It was my first book I read in 2022, and I was just gripped, so I want to go back in for a second time. I know that's double Donna Tartt, but I'm putting off rereads because although this is in my pile, there's other books that I should prioritise reading ahead of a reread. That is my bookish mid-year update. I hope I haven't missed anything out. I feel like I've gotten everything relevant. I always look away from the camera when I'm talking. It's because my books are right behind the camera, so I'm like looking at them in case they spark any inspiration. I have quite a lot of non-fiction in that pile that I should pick up, but I've just really not been on a non-fiction kind of reading thing this year. Last year I read quite a lot of non-fiction, I thought, or the year before. I have previously read a lot. But yeah, let me know what you think of today's video. Let me know if you'd like a book favourites video. I'm really reluctant to do it because it's hard to choose your favourites, but I have like a loose list that is ever updating. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'll put the link to my story graph in my description box. You can add me as a friend. You can look at what I'm reading, my TBR, DNFs, all of that kind of jazz, live and direct. And then I always upload a story on Instagram when I'm reading a book. I don't know why I said it like that, but yeah, I do that live so you can see what I'm reading as I'm reading it. If you enjoyed today's video, a little thumbs up or a subscribe is really great, really helps me out. And also if you want to know when I upload, you can put the little bell thing on and it gives you a notification. But I upload Wednesdays and Sundays. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.